PTF back with you. Very happy to welcome back to the In the Money airwaves an always popular guest, a man whose words you've read. He's attended a handful of derbies. I'm just going to say a handful of derbies in person. He's got something fun and new cooking this year. We'll ask him about that. We're also here to ask him about Stronghold. He is Hall of Famer Jay Privman. Jay, how are things?
Pete, I'm doing well. It's always good to be with you.
Let's start off by talking about what you've got cooking for the Derby this year. After having been to a few in a row, you got something new and interesting happening. Tell us about that.
I attended 39 over the course of my career, the last one being in 2022. And then, as you know, I retired from the racing form a few months later. Last year laid low, but everybody's told me that if you're not going to be at Churchill Downs, the second best place to be for the Derby is Las Vegas. So I'm gonna test that theory this year. I got invited to be on a night before the Derby seminar at the Rampart Casino, which is part of the JW Marriott in the suburb of Summerlin. So I'm going to take it in Vegas for the first time.
Oh, that sounds like a ton of fun. If you're out there in Vegas, check it out and see if you can get on that, what I'm sure will be a prestigious guest list to check that out. I've never done a Vegas Derby, thought about it, and just never made it happen. And now I'm in this groove of going every year, and I'm not complaining about that either. Let's get to the meat and the sandwich here, Jay. We want to talk about Stronghold, a horse that wasn't really on my radar, I'll be honest with you, before the Santa Anita Derby, despite the fact that this is a horse that had some decent form in the book before that. Is he a serious contender for the race? What do you think of Stronghold and his chances going forward?
So I don't know that he's a win candidate, Pete, but I think he's a horse that people should take a little bit seriously if they're playing the gimmicks, because I do think he has a bit of upside. I think he's been very cleverly managed this year. He had 4 starts as a 2-year-old. All of his races around 2 turns have been quite good, and he got a nice little break over the winter. And I thought it was really shrewd of them to go to Sunland and to give him a nice, easy start to his 3-year-old campaign with a win there in the Sunland Derby prior to the Santa Anita Derby. And I thought he showed a lot of grit in the Santa Anita Derby to win that race. The fig of that race, I think, might be a little light. I think he might be a little bit better than what that race gave him credit for. I think he's improved a little bit more over the winter than maybe the figs might show. And the couple of things that I like about him, Pete, he breaks well to put himself into good position, which is, I think, something that is usually good in these big Derby fields. He finishes his races off well. And he's got good connections. The jockey, Antonio Frezu, is really impressed since coming to California and being positioned out here and making this his home. And Phil D'Amato is obviously one of the best trainers in Southern California. So I think this horse has legitimately good connections. I think he's on the improve, and I think he will run better figs-wise than he ever has in the Kentucky Derby, because I think he's a progressive, improving kind of horse.
I'd love to drill down on the figure from Santa Anita Derby Day. You've spent a lot of time making figures yourself. Is there a specific reason why you think that figure might be low? Is there a split variant or something along those lines?
No, it's just that I think that Imagination had run a couple of races in the low to mid 90s, and usually at this time of year, horses are improving. And there were a number of horses in the race who ran poorly off of better figs previously, McVeigh. So I think being one of the more notable ones among that. And I think the fig ended up being a tougher one to make. And I'm a little more sympathetic to these horses improving at this time of year. And I don't know that Imagination regressed as much as the figs might show. I think that, in fact, Stronghold has improved. I don't know that his fig in the Santa Anita Derby, it shows it as being equal to the Sunland Derby. I think it might have been a little bit better than that, and I think there's another forward move in him come Kentucky Derby Day.
What do you see his ceiling as?
In terms of figs, or in terms of where he finishes the race?
Where he finishes in the Derby is probably an easier way to frame the question.
Yeah, I don't know that he's a win candidate, Pete. There's several other horses I like better than that, but I think he's a legitimately good horse who I absolutely will be using in the gimmicks. I certainly would have to use him in the try or the super. I think he's a horse who absolutely can at least be at that level come Derby Day.
What I really like about your case, Jay, is you're giving us reasons why he's better than the bare form suggests. That's when you find prices, and they can be very valuable on Derby Day, even if we're talking about those third and fourth spots.
And one other thing, Pete, just to bring up that people might forget about until they look at his past performances, he began his career in Kentucky. D'Amato had a string there last year, and in fact, his maiden win came at Churchill Downs. So he's the rare California shipper who already has a good performance over Churchill Downs.
These mini pods are brought to you by Free Reign Coffee Company. They've been powering the In the Money team throughout the Triple Crown prep season, and the coffee is fantastic. Whether you're looking for whole beans, grounds, or pods, Free Reign give you what you need to get up and get after it. And they've got subscriptions available too, so you never run out. Use our promo code MONEY20 for a 20% discount site-wide over at freereigncoffee.com. $4 million. That's how much original ITM Plus subscribers and contributors have won at the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge over the last 5 years. ITM Plus is the place for our best Kentucky Derby information, including grid picks from the team, trip notes, and specific betting advice. Sign up today at inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. Given the time you've spent on the Triple Crown Trail, Jay, I would be accused of host fail if I didn't ask you for at least a few sentences, macro level, about this race. Who has impressed you the most? Are the favorites the right ones heading into this year's Derby?
I think the top two are both legitimately good horses, that being Fierceness and Sierra Leone, but they both have things that I think you could knock. To me, Fierceness is a bigger knock because obviously, at least to this point in his career, he needs things his own way in terms of pace and in terms of the way a race unfolds. And if he gets that on Derby Day, he's going to be very tough to beat because his best races are better than anything else in this field. But when he doesn't get his own way, he doesn't perform quite as well. And so I think, we're recording this a little more than 2 weeks before the race. So we don't know yet the final field. We don't know where Fierceness is drawn. We don't know specifically what the pace is going to look like. And I think in the case of Fierceness, the draw is going to be really important because if he were hypothetically to draw inside and then not break, he's going to be in big, big trouble. And so if he gets an outside draw and he can get into that comfortable rhythm that he got into in the Florida Derby or in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he's going to run his race and he's going to be tough to beat. But there are some things about him that give me pause. As for Sierra Leone, I really like the way he finished off the Bluegrass. I mean, as we've all seen, the track at Keeneland has largely favored horses that are prominent throughout this meet, and he came from well back. He wants every part of a mile and a quarter. He's fired every time. To me, going in, he's the horse to beat among the top two. I like him a little bit more than Fierceness.
The way you've talked about that, though, I sense you've got something to pull in at least a little bit more of a price. Doesn't sound like you want to hitch your wagon to either of those stars necessarily from a wagering point of view.
Yeah, the horse that intrigues me is the horse who ran second to Sierra Leone in the Bluegrass, and that's Just a Touch. He was only making his third lifetime start. It was his first race around 2 turns, and of all the horses that were prominent early, he hung in there best. And I think the price disparity that you're going to get between Sierra Leone and Just a Touch is going to be pretty pronounced on Derby Day for horses that ran 1-2 out of what I think was the best of the preps so far. So, depending on where he lands, I'd want to get maybe in the at least 10-1 range on this horse. And if I did, to me, that would be a bet with value on Just a Touch. But I will definitely be using Sierra Leone as well. And as I was mentioning regarding Stronghold, if the try comes back with those two and Stronghold running third, I'll do pretty well.
He'll be a very happy man out there in Las Vegas. That's what I'm
exactly.
Hearing. Great stuff, Jay. Appreciate you as always. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks, Pete. I appreciate you having me on.